if you want, send it to me and I can try to figure out something and then you can just tell me if you approve it. Okay. Hello and welcome to our fourth lecture. In today's session, we will discuss how to design and implement effective interventions for female victims of intimate partner violence with problematic substance use. As always, I will refer to these as IPV and PSU. Before we begin, it is important to acknowledge that it is extremely challenging for anyone to seek help in recovering from PSU. This is especially true if the client has relied upon the substance for a long time and has gained a sense of absolute dependency that makes life seem unmanageable without it. Often, it is only the release that they feel through the alcohol or drugs they use that allows them to cope with the violence, abuse, and pain of IPV. How we, as professionals, manage these fragile clients in the initial interventions will have an impact on their ability to engage with other professionals that they will meet later. In this lecture, we will outline the role of emotionally containing the client's immediately presenting issues and concerns, the construction of a positive, empowering relationship, and the important first steps on the long-term process of recovery supported by a multidisciplinary team. Initial interventions can be broken down into a series of steps. The purpose of these steps is to develop immediate and practical strategies for addressing IPV, along with a safe and cohesive plan of action for the client's future progress through PSU recovery. This is a twofold approach that recognizes how IPV and PSU interact with each other and thus cannot be treated independently. If we intend to use a truly cohesive approach with clients experiencing IPV and PSU, it is essential that we develop a good working relationship from the very beginning with the client and any other service providers with which the client may become involved. The first step is assessment or information gathering. While it is an essential part of the initial intervention process, it is also an important and challenging step in the client's care pathway. As we have already mentioned, women with PSU issues, and especially those who also have suffered IPV, can be extremely vulnerable, presenting with acute self-esteem issues and a fragile ego. These women often see themselves as helplessly dependent upon the substance they are using, and the thought of letting go of this dependency can fill them with fear, dread, and self-loathing, a dynamic that reflects their internalization of IPV. This fear often results in attempts to avoid responsibility through transference of the dependency onto the professional, or by the creation of defense mechanisms aimed at denying the very existence of a problem. Denial is the primary defense mechanism and is aimed at convincing the user that, despite all evidence to the contrary, they are in control and can stop using anytime they like. Direct challenges to this denial inevitably result in heightened anxiety and corresponding escalation of defenses, ultimately leading to a fight-or-flight response. As a result, just attending the assessment interview may create stress levels high enough to trigger a massive traumatic and often self-destructive response. Often, women who have suffered long-term IPV become locked into this fight-or-flight state, which can make it very difficult to hold on to them when the work becomes challenging. Therefore, attention always needs to be paid to the client's immediate state of mind and anxiety levels, and the interviewer should be observant and well-versed in a range of de-escalation skills and grounding techniques. The aim of this process is to create a challenging environment, but one that is always within the client's capabilities to endure. Clients who are unable to deal with constant challenges during recovery often flee the service at this point. They usually hope to try again later, but this can, in fact, create a cycle of engagement and rejection. This leaves the professional to deal with the frustration of what may become an ambivalent relationship that leads to feelings of anger, hopelessness, and pessimism. Under this pressure, it might be tempting to be drawn into the position of taking responsibility for the client's recovery to try and force change. When this occurs, the professional inevitably then becomes the rescuer and the client the victim, needing to be saved. This is a disempowering relationship for clients as it puts them in the role of a child, while the professional assumes the role of the responsible adult or parent. Many clients enter addiction therapy with the assumption that the expert will take control of the addiction for them, and any relapse will then not be their fault, but will be experienced as evidence of the professional's uselessness. As mentioned in the first lecture, well-constructed and firmly held boundaries are an essential part of the therapeutic process. They are necessary from the very beginning. Within these boundaries, the client can then experience containment as valued and safe rather than punitive and controlling. Instead of demanding abstinence, a better approach may be for the client and professional to discuss why abstinence is important for their work and what the results will be if the client does not abstain. We can apply this approach to all boundary issues, such as respecting each other, turning up on time, or consistently attending sessions. In each case, why these issues are important should be explained clearly to the client. The objective of this is to help the women understand and accept the consequences of their choices so that they can then assume a sense of responsibility and ownership, rather than placing them in a subservient position. We should also remember that, like IPV, PSU affects not just the individual, but can impact the whole family. It is common for more than one adult in the family to have issues with drugs or alcohol, and this adds to the complexity of the problems, making recovery even more challenging for the individual. If there are children in the household, it may also impact them, often resulting in neglect and potential risks to their safety. Women may still be involved in an abusive relationship or may have recently escaped one. Both may be triggers to seek help, but may also be a major influence on their ability to cope with any additional emotional pressure. These are just some of the factors that need to be considered when determining an appropriate model of engagement and pathway for care. Family circumstances also play a major part in how well confidentiality can be maintained. As mentioned in Lecture 1, it is important that both client and professional clearly understand the limitations of confidentiality and how it might be broken when circumstances demand it. We are going to talk more about this in the next lecture, which is dedicated to risk assessment. These factors will also form part of the evaluation of each woman's ability to engage with the therapeutic process. This evaluation should not be viewed as criticism, but as an honest review of her resilience to deal with the work of recovery. It forms the basis of what we mean by a holistic approach. By assigning appropriate relevance to all contributing factors, both positive and negative, in women's lives, we accept that recovery is a very challenging process. The assessment also needs to cover a range of areas not only for ourselves, but for any other services and agencies we may refer clients to save women from the trauma of going over their story again and again. It would make sense to create a single assessment protocol that would be suitable for the various professionals and organizations involved in their case and that could be shared when appropriate. However, written permission from the client is necessary before contact is made with any other service to share this assessment. During the assessment, collecting basic information about the client is a good start. This includes the full name, date of birth, address, telephone number, email, and emergency contact details. After this, more specific questions may be asked. Who does the client live with? Are there any dependents, such as children or vulnerable adults in the home? If yes, what are their ages and circumstances? Are social services involved with the family at present? Medical concerns can be addressed by asking, when did the client last consult a doctor, and do they have any physical health problems? And you may want to get the name and contact details of their current doctor. Possible mental health issues should also be identified by asking if there are any diagnosed comorbid issues such as PTSD, anxiety, depressive personality, or psychotic disorders. And the name and contact details of any mental health teams the client is or has been involved with are also important. Special attention should be paid to suicide and self-harm. Does the client have active suicidal or self-harming thoughts? Do they have a history of suicide or self-harm attempts? When was the last time they attempted suicide, and what did they do? And who was aware of this? Ongoing police or legal issues is another point that can be addressed. Is the client involved with any active police investigations or court actions? Have they been under restraining or non-molestation orders? Another important point worth including in the assessment is the client's attachment history. What are the client's family dynamics? What was the client's childhood like? What kinds of education and work experiences have they had? What are their past and current relationships? Does the client have friendships and a social network? Are there any housing or welfare issues? Finally, it is crucial to assess the client's aims and motivation by asking, what does the client wish to achieve? Identifying problems, practical goals, and targets through a collaborative process is useful even at this early stage, as it gives an immediate sense of purpose to the work. The Stages of Change model that we will discuss next is a very useful tool for this purpose. It helps to break down overwhelming issues into smaller problems that may be managed more easily. This model was developed by Prochaska and Di Clemente in the 1970s and has proven successful when applied to PSU. It consists of 6 stages and is designed to create a structured approach that acknowledges the challenges posed by trying to instigate any major change in life. It is important to recognize that change is not easy. Even if the advantages are blatantly obvious, we simply do not like to let go of what is familiar. Prior to engaging in any services, many clients will attempt to stop using substances without any plans or support in place. Each unplanned and unsupported attempt and its inevitable failure lowers the self-esteem and motivation of the client. It should also be acknowledged that while IPV is still an active issue, the client may see recovery from PSU as an impossible challenge, and any application of the Stages of Change model in such cases must account for both IPV and PSU if it is to be successful. Each stage needs to be worked through carefully before moving on to the next. Often, it may be necessary to go back to an earlier stage as unexpected issues arise. The point is to work carefully on each stage to make the following stage as easy to complete as possible. The first stage is pre-contemplation. In this stage, the client is not even thinking about change and refuses to see a problem. Many people with PSU find it extremely difficult to accept that they have a problem in the first place, and will often go to extraordinary and complex lengths to hide it from themselves and others. Moving to the second stage by accepting that a problem exists is a task that the client usually should face alone, and it may take many years before they gain the courage to do so. Both PSU and IPV sufferers often see themselves as to blame for their situation, and their negative feelings are often exacerbated by those around them. They view themselves as responsible for everything that has happened, feeling that they deserve punishment rather than help. The second stage is contemplation. After the client accepts that there's a problem, professionals can be supportive in helping the client face the truth. Usually occurring within the first few meetings, the client often presents as confused, fragile, and at their most vulnerable. This stage, therefore, requires a lot of empathy and tact from the professional if the client's motivation is to be maintained. Accepting the reality of their problems can be a traumatic experience in its own right, filled with grief, despair, and often rage. The third stage is preparation. At this stage, the problems have been determined, and it is time to get together and decide how both the client and the professional can address them through mutual agreement. This stage can also be used to look at what resources are available. The experience of not being alone with their problems can have a huge significance for a survivor of IPV who may have kept their secret for many years. The creation and achievement of goals is an essential part of maintaining motivation for the client. It gives a sense of getting somewhere in a process that is long and arduous. However, to be effective, the goals need to be within the abilities of the client to achieve, or they will simply become another indicator of failure. For example, Alcoholics Anonymous sets a goal of 1 day at a time for recovery, and this is always a good starting point. The fourth stage is action. Now that a plan has been created and goals have been determined, It is time to begin without delay or hesitation. There may often be a lot of prevarication around this point, as it involves actually making the change rather than just talking about it. A very scared client may make comments like, "It's too near Christmas, I'll start in January," or "I'll start next week or month, it's just not a good time right now." Many women who have experienced IPV feel terrified of leaving in case they may make matters worse. It is always a fantasy that is put off until the future. Putting this fantasy into action can be very demanding and requires a lot of organization and support. There will never be a good time to start this process, as something will always get in the way if someone is scared enough. It is the role of the professional to work gently through the client's objections and fears. The next stage is maintenance. Now the plan is up and running. How can momentum be maintained and built upon? Things that are not working need to be reviewed and changed, and those that are working should be expanded. This stage involves working together to continually fine-tune the system and to carefully bring back into the client's life things that have been lost. For the sufferer of IPV, it is an opportunity to be able to think clearly, perhaps for the first time in years, free from coercion and manipulation, and to begin making decisions for themselves. The sixth stage is relapse. Now, this seems like an odd part to include in the process, but it is essential to plan for the possibility of relapse. Otherwise, a small slip could be devastating. Many victims of IPV will return to their abusers at some point. Similarly, many with PSU will return to alcohol, seemingly regardless of the consequences or without understanding why. It is important to make sense of what is happening with the client and find a solution that protects the future, rather than just condemning her as a failure. Everything can be a learning opportunity if a collaborative approach is maintained. Each slip, including past ones, may be drawn upon to gain a greater understanding of the client's strengths and vulnerabilities. Used effectively, the Stages of Change model functions as a collaborative working process through which the client is fully engaged with the therapist in a series of joint tasks. By using careful planning and evaluation at every stage, it becomes possible to address and solve many potential problems before they occur. When tightly focused, it can be used to tackle daily issues that could lead to relapse, such as dealing with cravings or avoiding triggers. However, its scope may also be widened to include all aspects of the client's life that influence their behavior. These can include past and present trauma, fragile self-esteem, mental health issues, and abusive relationships. In this application, the contemplation and preparation stages would be used to determine which referrals to other specialists would make sense, with the client always in the center of the process. This proactive and collaborative initial approach is invaluable in setting the scene for the client's engagement with all the various services they will meet, especially if they believe that all the professionals involved are working together as a team rather than in isolation. Another important component of intervention is the follow-up review that happens at the end. Often, this area is seen as something to be haphazardly arranged with very little input from the professionals. It is also often missed in the demands of a busy department. Follow-up needs to be actively pursued and organized within a timescale appropriate to the individual client's needs. It can take advantage of the high motivation the client often experiences during the early stages of recovery. The follow-up review should not be a judgmental process in which the client is viewed as either a success or a failure. Rather, as in the Stages of Change model, successes or failures should be viewed equally as learning opportunities in the recovery plan. The follow-up review is an essential part of the process in which women feel supported and not alone in their struggle. This is the end of today's lecture. You can find the assessment questionnaire that we have used in the attached documents. Feel free to download it and adjust it for the needs of your organization. Goodbye.